Hey y'all. I figured I'd take this time. We're getting into the holidays. A lot of folks are buying new bikes for their kids or loved ones or whatever, and they get it home and they want to throw it together themselves. Which good for you. I love people trying to build a bike by themselves. It's the best way to learn how to bike really works. And it also gives you some familiarity with if you have any problems while you're riding it. Hey, I know what that was. So what I wanted to do is kind of just go through a quick bike build. I have, I think, 18 minutes in terms of how long this runs before it stops. So we're going to try to build this in 18 minutes. On top of that, we're going to just do it with essentially 3 tools. This is a multi-tool that I carry on my bikes. In fact, I've had this multi-tool for probably about 15 years. It's been around the world with me. It's got some rust and corrosion, and it's looking a little haggard, but everything works great on it. The reason I'm using this is most of these bikes will come with some kind of hodgepodge smattering of garbage tools to assemble it. Those generally are just very cheaply made, soft metal, more apt to round over a fastener than actually get the fastener in. So even if you're not, if you don't have tools at home to do this, I'd recommend buying a decent set of Allen wrenches. This multi-tool we sell for 18 bucks here, and it has everything on it that you'll need, which is kind of in line with what you would spend on a decent, starter Allen, L-handle Allen set. So that's why I'm going to use this. The other 2 tools I'm using is an adjustable wrench, which literally you can buy just about anywhere for 5 bucks. It's just good to have around for your house. I bet you have one in your junk drawer. It really, the biggest thing we're going to need on this bike for is these are a 14 millimeter bolt, sometimes 13 millimeter, depending on whatever, especially on kids' bikes, that varies. You're going to have 15 millimeter bolts on the axles, and then for the pedals, also a 15 millimeter bolt. Now, with that one, we may actually have to go to a standard, open end 15 millimeter wrench, just because it's a little bit narrower than what the adjustable wrench is. And in some cases, you really do need a pedal wrench, which is narrower yet, so that you can really get between the pedal and the crank arm. Not critical in all situations, especially on lower end, kids' bikes and stuff like that. Usually a 15 millimeter open end or your adjustable are going to be plenty. On higher end bikes, on the multi-tool, we have this 8 millimeter. That's pretty much for your pedals, because those will have an 8 millimeter that comes through the pedal. So for most bikes that take a clipless pedal or a higher end flat, they usually have either an 8 or a 6 for tightening the pedal in. So really all you would need is that guy. Now, what about the diagonal cutters? I've had already one bike come in this year that somebody got a little bit overzealous with using a box cutter to open the bike up, and went right through the sidewall of the tire and sliced the tube. So we use a box cutter for all things on a bike because you're less likely to do damage to the bike. And on most of these, you can just snap it with your finger and get it off. There's no reason to use any kind of cutter. So with that said, I'm going to strip this down real quick, get it clear, and then we can kind of go over a few things. All these are just for shipping. No reason to leave them on. Just taking all of this stuff off here. And again, the idea is to, when you do have to cut something, make sure you're clear of everything. But you just don't want to hit any of the cables. You don't want to obviously hit the tire, anything like that. And obviously I'm doing this in a bike repair stand, which makes it worlds easier. And if you don't have a repair stand at home, we do have a loaner right here. You can borrow this from us, and take it home, build the bike, and bring it back when you're done. We just want people to be able to work on bikes, and doing this upside down on the floor, half a bottle of whiskey in, it's going to be challenging. So you can even hold your bottle of whiskey while you're doing it in the stand. You don't have to set it down and knock it over, have the dogs drink it, whatever. Well, you know what I'm saying. So as you can see, this thing comes down pretty quick. Starting to see what the bicycle looks like underneath. We're going to kind of take a pause right here because I wanted to cover the front end of the bike, because this is something else I've already run into once this season, is when they ship bikes, they generally ship them with the fork facing backwards. And the reason is they can get a slightly smaller box, so they can save some money on shipping. So almost all forks on box store bikes and the more affordable bikes will actually say front. Right here, it'll say front. To let you know, hey, we shipped it backwards, and that was intentional, but you need to turn it around. Some folks miss that, and like I said, I already had one this year that came in with the fork on backwards. And so it's just something to be conscientious of when you're bringing, when you're building the bike. So this one, the fork wanted to turn this way to get my brake cable up front, and one of these sides, there we go. There we go. So that's pretty much as quick and easy as it is to get like 90% there. We're closing in on her. This is where we're finally, for the first time, we're gonna grab our little Allen wrench here. In this case, it's a 4mm on these stem bolts. And we just need to loosen them to be able to get the stem centered in there. But yeah, fortunately nowadays bikes come pretty doggone well set up. In fact, I did a carbon gravel bike the other day that, I mean, holy cow! It was under an hour from start to finish. And that was really, I mean, seeing that even a higher end bike, without getting into some of the silliness of really high end stuff, is really nice to see that bike companies are figuring it out. And I gotta wonder if Canyon may have put a little bit of pressure on other bike companies to make them more buildable. Canyon is like a direct consumer brand for bikes, and they actually, I believe they used to, or I do remember them coming with a pretty good tool set. I've built one of those before, and I was impressed with the tools that it came with. Probably because since they are assuming consumers are building them, they don't want them to destroy the bikes right when they're putting them together. So I popped this grip off so that I could get the bars in. Just gonna pop that guy back on. Fortunately, these are lock-on grips, so they're really easy to get on and off. Put my little bar plugs in the end. What I usually do at this point is just check and make sure that my fork and my stem are perpendicular, and I usually wait until it's on the ground to do a final assessment, but these screws are pretty far out, so I'm just gonna put them in just so they're barely touching. That one might be snug. And again, once you get it on the ground, you have to remember to double check all of these stem bolts once the bike's on the ground. That's one thing that people forget all the time. One of the things you can do, like I have this red toe strap here, is you can just throw something on it that's out of place, so that when you're done building the bike, you know to double check these bolts here and these face plate bolts. They're absolutely life or death critical. So when you're building a bike, do something to remind you to double check them when you get it on the ground. Why don't you just do it in the stand? Well, if you do it in the stand, you can get everything tightened, and then they're not quite dead on. It's a lot easier to get it dead on when you get it on the floor. So just do something while it's in the stand to just remind you, hey, come back and check those. So that's pretty much the front end is roughed in. We're gonna go ahead and get the wheel in, and we're gonna kind of talk about brakes and that kind of thing at this point. So I'm just gonna throw this guy in there. Oh, I did cut that one already. Now, the one thing that a lot of folks, again, this is when you're building them on the floor at home, what's really tough is making sure that the wheel is in the dropouts and centered. This one has little safety tabs. Make sure our safety tabs are in. There we go, safety tabs are in. One of the things that I've found while mounting wheels and making sure they're centered is frequently, almost always, tires are going to come uninflated. If you try to center them while they're uninflated, the tire may be leaning one way or another on the rim. So I go ahead and just bring that up to pressure while I'm installing it. And then I try to use the center groove, center tread of the tire. And line it up with the center hole at the bottom of the fork here. And again, I'm only doing this by hand just to get me close, because I don't want to torque it too far with a tool. And this is where our adjustable wrench will come into play. It's a 15 millimeter, but you know, adjustable wrenches, they're all the millimeters, so it's fine. So as we're bringing them up, keep looking at that center tread. Make sure that that wheel didn't lean one way or another. And the reason is you're going to be wrestling with the brakes if this thing wanders to one side or the other while you're doing this. So I'm just bringing them up to full tension. And we sat on that center track the whole time. So pop the brake in there and we should be good to go on that. Probably, as you see, it's not doing brake stuff. You need to pull a little bit of slack out of that brake, but let's go ahead and finish mounting these guys up here. These are going to be like little 3 millimeter or 2.5 millimeter, something like that on these guys. Millimeter. Okay. All right. All right. So we got our lock-on grip is locked on. The brake lever itself is going to be a 5 millimeter, and this is, again, this one shipped with this side kind of set up. Not always will they come that way. In this case, it did. So what I do is I just match my angle of the brake lever to the angle of the other brake lever. Excuse me. All right, cockpit's good. We're gonna pull some of that slack. Again, a 5mm here on this brake. What I do is I roll my fingers on the brake arm, and that's kind of how I feel it. Back it back off. This bike is one that we give away here at the shop. It was actually one that was in a container that apparently had shipping damage. The container leaked on transit. That was 3 years ago. This is one of the last ones we have. So there's definitely surface corrosion on parts on this bike that hopefully your bike won't have when you're assembling it. But we're going to be giving this away. So it's okay if it has a little bit of surface corrosion. It's all right. And what I'm doing here is I'm just fine tuning the brakes. I know my tire is centered based on when I mounted it and looking at the ridge. But I noticed my brakes were dragging on this side, not that side. Adjusting these screws down here can angle the brakes. As you send it in, it pulls the brake out, so you can kind of really dial that in. So we've got almost a bike looking thing. Let's throw pedals on it. Pedals are right and left threaded. If it doesn't say R or L on the pedal, one of the things you can look at is on the spindle right here beside the pedal, you'll see striations. I don't know if you can see the striations there. It's grooves in the pedal. The right pedal is smooth. It does not have any grooves on it. All right pedals are going to be smooth. All left pedals will have those striations, or sometimes they'll have a groove that's cut around it that looks like a band around there, whereas the other one does not have that groove. Now, when you get into the higher end pedals, they don't really have that anymore, but almost all flat pedals are going to have some kind of marking like that. And the reason is these pedals are threaded differently. The left is reverse threaded, so to screw the right end, you would just screw it like you would normally screw it. And I'm going to show you with a tool. The way to tighten a pedal, and I've told everybody here that's worked here, is if you just start with a wrench at 12 o'clock, you turn it towards the front of the bike. If you're doing the left pedal, you start at 12 o'clock and you turn it towards the front of the bike. That's the easiest way to remember to tighten it. And I also tell them it's another way to remember is to remove a pedal like you're trying to get out of something, is you back pedal. And so what you would do is, you put the wrench at 12 o'clock and move it towards the back of the bike to get out of there, to back the pedal off. And that's the same on both sides. Start at 12 o'clock and move it towards the back. You're back pedaling to get the pedal out of there. So easy way to kind of remember which way that you're supposed to turn a pedal to get it on and off. And I always start with the pedals by hand, just so I don't cross thread them right off the jump. And then you can just kind of hold on to those flats and just spin that thing around as far as you can. That one, we're almost all the way in. And then same thing with the left pedal, started by hand. Come on. That one's a little bit grittier, but we got the thread started. I'm going to use that 15mm box wrench and literally just turning the pedals to turn it on. And you do want these guys to be pretty snug. If you don't get them snug, they can start to work a little loose. And once they start to work loose, they will obliterate the threads in the crank arm. Keep in mind, these crank arms are just a cast aluminum crank arm, so they aren't super strong. And the spindles on the pedals are steel, sometimes hardened steel. They will absolutely obliterate the aluminum threads in the crank arms if they're not snugged up. So we're at a point now that looks like we have a bicycle. That was pretty much it. From here, there's some fine tuning on things like shifting, brake adjustments, stuff like that, but we've got a functional, safe bike. Again, we'll drop it out of the stand, check all these bolts, make sure that it's safe, and we got to put air in that rear tire. But this is pretty much a finished bike, and we did it all with quite literally, I guess, I did bring out a Phillips head screwdriver. So hopefully in your junk drawer at home you have a Phillips head screwdriver if you have to adjust those brakes. So that was our complete toolkit right there. You don't need really any specialty tools. You could probably substitute scissors for the diagonal clippers if you have some good scissors that you don't mind cutting zip ties with. Just please don't use a box knife to cut that open. And again, with almost all of the padding, you just pop it off by hand. It's just masking tape used to hold those together. If they do have zip ties, again, please don't use a knife, use a box cutter or anything like that. You just risk damaging the bike, scratching the paint, which is going to cause rust, or cutting the tire, damaging the cables. It's one of those things where it's just easier to do if you just have something that's less invasive. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. Hope this is helpful for showing you how to get things set up. Again, we have a loaner stand here if you need to borrow one just to knock out a bike real quick and make your life a whole lot easier. And we do have those Crank Brothers M10 multi-tools in stock. They're 18 bucks. So not only great to just assemble the bike, but I mean mine, like I said, is about 15 years old and it has gone everywhere with me. So it's something that you buy once and you never have to think about again. All right, well, thanks a lot, guys.